Let's start with something good. I visited a great school last week. It's a rural school in a one-school district. The school is surrounded by redwoods. It's just lovely. The school community suffered a devastating fire just a few years ago. You don't always get this feeling when you visit a school, but it is plain that this school community is close, everyone looking out for one another. They have to. The kids at this school were happy. The teachers are happy. 2 of my former students now teach there. One taught as a beginning teacher in a school that was not good for kids or teachers. She loves her present school. She says that a lot of this has to do with a good principal. He serves the school community well and makes it possible for the teacher to do right by the kids. Care and kindness are plain to see everywhere. The kids at this school have a wonderful covered lunch space at the heart of the school, with a redwood reaching out through the awning covering the space. I was at another school earlier in the week where some new buildings have been put in to get rid of the ancient, falling-apart portable classrooms. Good to make better classrooms, but the school lunch space was turned into an asphalt slab with a great roof of solar panels overhead. There had been fruit trees in the quad surrounded by the old portables. I looked forward to when they bloomed every spring. Something beautiful to make up for the ugly of the buildings. They all came down with the construction. Hope they find a way to bring some of that loveliness back. Something not good. The most difficult student. This past week I heard a number of stories from my present student teachers and from my first-year teachers about super challenging students. It was the theme of the week. You likely know what I am talking about. The student who will blow up and start throwing things, tearing things down, hurting other students, yelling and screaming. We've all had challenging students. What surprised me this time was how much the same each of these kids are. What they have in common is a kind of disregard for others and a need for everything to be about them. They need the teacher to make everything in the class work for them without regard to the effect on others. They need all the other kids to behave in the way they want. When those things don't happen, they blow up. I've heard 3 such stories this past week. I've heard others over the past years. A few things have come up when talking about such kids. The first is that they are often made to be the center of everything at home. They get what they want when they want it. They learn that being awful to others works to get what you want. The second is a kind of inability to see things from somebody else's perspective. It is hard to work with them to do right by something that they did wrong. They are challenged by taking on someone else's perspective. Too often they just assert that the wrong was done to them and only to them. I've witnessed kids blowing up in class, walking up to a bulletin board and tearing everything off the wall. A child just screaming at the top of their lungs while the rest of the class is meant to sit through it. 2 teachers have told me of the protocol they have had to follow in their classes. When a kid blew up, they evacuated their classrooms. The kids and teachers went to a designated place and waited until someone came along to take care of the kid blowing up. The classroom teacher is just supposed to live with this as a feature of their classroom, something that is just part of the world these days. Admin too often steps back and lays the burden on the classroom teacher as if they had no tools or resources to do anything. Not okay. Teachers are not martyrs. They should not have to convince all of their students that this is just how things are, and we all just have to sit through it. Kids are learning that when things are not good, adults just kind of give up. They learn that their education can be held hostage by another, and adults won't do anything about it. A kindergarten teacher told me about her lost year, and her students' lost year because of the energy and attention required for one student, a student who needed something much different than simply being made to go to school every day. I did talk through this with my beginning teachers. We do have sympathy for kids like this, though it is not easy. Plainly, something is going on that feeds a kind of narcissism and a disregard for others. When talking about such kids with teachers, we worry that such seemingly deeply embedded ways of being in the world will not work out for them, that their life will be just hard. We understand that such behavior expresses a kind of need, something that needs to be worked on for such kids. The trick is to build the kind of relationship with them where we can work out what that is and then work to address it. It's not easy to build that kind of relationship with kids who don't quite know how to get along with other people. A bit of wisdom came from one of my beginning teachers. She keyed us in on how the child she is working with really tries to force other kids into friendships with him, and when that doesn't go well, he attacks them. Awful, yes, but the young teacher said we should maybe be focused on how they belong or don't belong in the class, and that their self-focus and blow-ups may be marks of not knowing how to get along with and be with others. What a great thought from someone just starting out. Some vocabulary. Came across a new word for me this week. I was reading an article about a curriculum approach that the authors thought very important, and they wrote that the point of the article was to conscientize teachers into their understanding of curriculum. Troubled by this. Essentially, to conscientize is to bring somebody into a way of thinking that they did not have before. In the framing of the article, and from my take on this word, it is very much about teachers having holes in their understandings that need to be fixed. These holes being trouble for their teaching and their kids. It's a high-minded way of saying that teachers don't get what's important and what they think needs to be fixed. Be careful when anyone comes at your teaching with prescriptions wrapped in such vocabulary. Some history. I regularly visit with a friend who is a retired history teacher. We fall into conversation about what gets taught and why, who gets to decide this, and the politicization of education past and present. What gets taught and why is a conundrum across all subjects. In history, this is particularly complicated. We get in trouble simply by singularizing history, as if there is a history that has been written to be understood and taught. We could think about teaching histories, the different perspectives people have had on how people have lived in the past. This has virtue, setting us up to understand history as complicated and constructed by people, not simply something set in books. The plural of histories has its own problem, in that it separates us, moving us away from how history connects us and knots our different lives together. In my last visit with him, another history teacher happened upon us, one who currently teaches world history in high school. He had just that day taught about the histories of Israel and Palestine. He was surprised, but perhaps shouldn't have been, by how little his students knew of the recent and ancient history of this place in the world. The three of us had a good conversation, much of it about how brave he had been to teach such a contentious topic. We wondered what kids would take away and how parents might respond to the lesson. The teacher expects some blowback. He knows that parents have strong beliefs about what is right and wrong and are likely to give him grief from both sides. My retired history teacher friend cautioned him about setting up false equivalencies about history, treating one story as importantly as another. What I held on to is that this teacher had to be brave. He stood up and did what history teachers should do, setting out what we know about something important, in all the messy ways we know things. Other history teachers likely would teach it differently. That's fine. It's hard to argue that there is one history to be taught. What matters is standing up for what you believe is important to teach, not because what you know is what kids should know, but because it is important to move kids into frayed spaces so that they can learn how people make sense of those messy ideas. History teaching should be about sense-making, so that those frayed spaces can be made better. Do share comments or stories of your own. I am still thinking about how to best share what matters to me in teaching and schooling. Reach out to me if you want a conversation or if you have some ideas for me. Thanks for giving this some attention.